Well, it appears another high-profile Democrat has officially announced their support for President Donald Trump for the 2024 election cycle. And who is it that may be? Well, you already saw the thumbnail, so you know that it's Tulsi Gabbard. And the thing that I find most intriguing about this specifically is how so many of these high-profile people who truly stood for what the Democratic Party claimed to stand for during the times of JFK, well, we can see that they're abandoning the party in mass, and now they're fleeing to Donald Trump's side. This has been quite an interesting turn because not only are we seeing a political realignment in many ways, but we're seeing the regime itself spin out and spit nothing more than propaganda into the ether rather than actually trying to curry favor with the people that it is losing. And that is exactly what you need to realize, that someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who understands the machinations of the regime in its totality, whether it be on the political front here in the domestic square within the home of the United States, as we see within the halls of Washington, D.C., or the totality of the fucking horrific insanity that is brought upon so many of these veterans that have to suffer wounds or lose their lives in these conflicts abroad that we consistently send them to go fight and die in. Tulsi Gabbard, being a veteran and a combat medic herself, understanding what this means when you send men to go fight and die in war. But not only that, she realizes that what we're doing is endlessly funding the military-industrial complex and at the behest of nothing more than the dollary dues they can funnel into their pockets and the crony politicians that do the bidding of those lobbies themselves. Tulsi Gabbard understands this and she will not stand for it, and that is exactly why she is no longer allowed to stand within the halls of the Democratic Party. Now let's go ahead and throw it into this clip of Tulsi Gabbard endorsing Donald Trump for president.
It is a privilege to be here with all of you, my brothers and sisters in uniform, especially on this day of all days. I had the privilege of joining President Trump this morning at Arlington Cemetery, where he joined two Gold Star families and loved ones of Staff Sergeant Hoover and Sergeant G, both of whom were two of the 13 killed in the Abbey Gate attack 3 years ago today in Kabul. And I can tell you, as we were there, as he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier, joining these Marines' loved ones, I felt the sorrow that he shared with them in their loss. I felt and saw his sincere appreciation for these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate price and their loved ones who continue to grieve to this day. This is personal for me, as I know it is for so many of you here. This is real. It's not just words. I first deployed to Iraq in 2005 with the Hawaii Army National Guard as a member of Charlie Med. As those of you who were deployed during that time know, it was the height of the war, and sadly, we took many casualties. And every day we were confronted with that high human cost of war and that sadness as we boarded the plane when we left, that we were leaving some of our brothers and sisters behind, only to lose others when we got home to suicide. So I mean what I say when I share with you that I know that President Trump understands the grave responsibility that a president and commander-in-chief bears for every single one of our lives. Whether you're a soldier, you're an airman, a Marine, sailor, or a coastie, he keeps us in his heart in the decisions that he makes. We saw this through his first term in the presidency, when he not only didn't start any new wars, he took action to de-escalate and prevent wars. He exercised the courage that we expect from our commander-in-chief in exhausting all measures of diplomacy, having the courage to meet with adversaries, dictators, allies, and partners alike in the pursuit of peace, seeing war as a last resort. The truth is, as we head towards our decision as a country in November, the same cannot be said about Kamala Harris. In fact, the opposite is true, and we're living through this reality today as this administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts in regions around the world, and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House, where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. Kamala Harris has done this over the last 3.5 years. She won't hesitate to continue that if she is elected as president. President Trump has been their first and foremost target in this because they don't want us as voters to even have the option to vote for him. I've been their most recent target, added to a secret domestic terror watch list after exposing the truth about what kind of dangers we would face if Kamala Harris is elected as president. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. We can't allow our country to be destroyed by politicians who will put their own power ahead of the interests of the American people, our freedom, and our future. I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
And there you have it, the Hawaiian surfer babe announcing that she will be endorsing the Don for president for the 2024 election cycle. Here you can see the post from Tulsi herself where I got this from. She says, "I was a Democrat for over 20 years. Today I endorse Donald Trump for president." And while this announcement was interesting, and I would argue not incredibly surprising considering how Tulsi Gabbard has positioned herself after seeing what the Democratic Party now represents, well, it's the response that Tulsi gave to Vigilant Fox. Here you see Vigilant Fox says, "First Bobby, now Tulsi. I can't wait to see who's next," which he actually got this wrong. What he should have said was, "First Elon, then Bobby, now Tulsi," but I understand he's talking specifically about those within the political field itself. But what we can realize is that it's not just those within the political party itself as those who walk the halls of Washington, D.C. and serve in government. It's also those who were of the most notable Democrats who had name recognition that pulled many people to their side solely for the fact of what it is that they represent. As we see with someone akin to, I don't know, Elon Musk, because Elon Musk being someone who sways behind Donald Trump is certainly something that will catch a lot of eyes. And then you see a Kennedy, what is effectively royalty within the Democrat Party, now bowing out of support for the Democrats, going independent, and then announcing support for Donald Trump, a Republican, and then also talking about the seat change that is happening within American politics and how we're having another political realignment. Isn't that just something? Because the Democrats, you see, apparently they used to be the people that cared about people, and nowadays all they are is the party of war that espouses the machinations of the military-industrial complex. So what we see here from Tulsi, she says, "There are more of us than they realize," in response to Vigilant Fox claiming that ex-Democrats are about to be the wrecking ball that crushes the Democratic Party. Okay, so what do we need to touch on there? It would be the fact that that very well may be true, and I bet Tulsi Gabbard has a lot of information on that. Talking to people behind the scenes who are actually in politics, I'm sure she knows a litany of different people that do not support the standards of what the Democratic Party are doing, that are mainline Democrats. And with this, we see the fact of Elon, then Bobby, now Tulsi. We could see a domino effect that could tilt so many people into announcing their support for Donald Trump and their abandonment of the Democratic Party. Do we know if that will happen? No. Would I be surprised? No, not at all. But the thing that we would have to realize would be that these people would actually have to conjure, let's say, a fiber of courage and actually step outside the spectrum of allowable opinion that they have been keeping their mouth closed as they walk within, rather than actually challenging the established ethos of what has been established around them per se, because the construction of what they walk within, well, it very much is that of a house of cards, and as you consistently walk around thundering your feet and shaking the ground, you realize that the structure you're walking within, well, it's quite fragile, and because of that, you very well may wish to flee, and that is exactly what we're seeing in so many people abandoning the Democratic Party, because while it may be something that has a strong structural housing per se when it comes to the fact of what the established establishment represents, they are undoubtedly a house of cards, and all you need is a perceptual change of the people themselves to have a seat change in the halls of power that will rip the rug out from underneath the feet of so many of these people within Washington, D.C., that they will not know how to react. And in doing so, you will see that house of cards crumble, and these people will eat each other alive. Because as we know, the left eats itself, they simply don't do it fast enough. Let's go ahead now and jump on to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Here we see Wonder Woman has just joined the Justice League. Look, I understand that it's a cool framing to go ahead and give it. Like, look, we've got Wonder Woman. We're the Unity Party. The Justice League has a nice ring to it because we care about justice. But I don't know what it is with boomers, man. And they're just desire, and I would argue necessity, to make everything a Marvel, DC, or Harry Potter reference to go ahead and try and get along with the millennials. It's like, can we not? Can we just not do this for once? Anyways, moving on now, let's jump into these articles. Here we see from the BBC, ex-Democrat Tulsi Gabbard officially endorses Trump. Now we jump to the AP. More than 200 former Republican presidential staffers signed open letter endorsing Harris over Trump. Okay, so what you're telling me is it's basically 200 of the worst Republicans imaginable. And when you realize that it's staffers for people like Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, and the like, and George W. Bush, you're like, oh, yeah, these people quite literally suck. Now we jump over to USA Today. More than 200 Bush, McCain, Romney alums endorse Harris for president, criticizing Trump. Isn't that just something? Scrolling a little bit down, we see more than 200 Republicans who previously worked for either former President George W. Bush, the late Senator John McCain, or Senator Mitt Romney endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris for president in an open letter Monday obtained exclusively by USA Today. So what do we see? Oh, the establishment politicians that will bend the knee and ebb and flow with whatever the narrative is are doing whatever the establishment desires. What a shocker. Continuing on with the article, we see the letter from alums of the 3 Republican presidential nominees prior to former President Donald Trump comes on the heels of a Democratic National Convention last week in Chicago that showcased Republican detractors of the GOP nominee. At least 5 former aides to former President George H.W. Bush also signed the letter, which has 238 signatures in all. A similar group of about 150 anti-Trump former staffers of Bush, McCain, and Romney pledged support for President Joe Biden in the 2020 election. We reunite today, joined by George H.W. Bush alumni, to reinforce our 2020 statements, and for the first time, jointly declare that we're voting for Vice President Kamala Harris and Governor Tim Walz this November. The letter reads, of course, we have plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. That's to be expected. The alternative, however, is simply untenable. Interesting phrasing there. The alternative, however, is simply untenable. And what does that do? Well, it should paint the entire picture for you and allow you to understand the landscape we're walking within, how deeply entrenched people are, and how deep the line in the sand has officially been drawn. Because if you take even a half step over it, then by all means you will be considered to be fraternizing with the enemy and deemed as the enemy, just like we've seen with Tulsi Gabbard. And if you need an example of this, we'll look no further than what we have here. Why Tulsi Gabbard was put on TSA's suspected terror watch list from the town hall. This is not an exaggeration. This is not a joke. This is 100% serious. Because Tulsi Gabbard defied the standards of what the regime was purporting, she was then put on a terror watch list, and she has been getting independently searched to the nth degree when she goes on trips with her husband, and that is something that she has been curious about for quite some time. Is it that I'm being targeted and focused on, and that I've been put onto a specific classification that allows me to be investigated more deeply when I go through TSA? Well, yes, in fact, it has. Now let's go ahead and jump in and see what this article has for us. Last month, Gabbard and her husband were at the airport waiting to board their flight when they found their boarding passes were marked with SSSS, which stands for Quad S. This means that a passenger is viewed as a potential threat and subject to random searches. She also will unknowingly have 2 explosive detection canine teams, a transportation security specialist, an undercover TSA supervisor, and 3 federal air marshals on any flight she boards. I had the audacity to tell the truth, that Kamala Harris would essentially be a mouthpiece and puppet of the military-industrial complex in the national security state. The next day, July 23rd, they retaliated, Gabbard said. Sadly, this is what we can expect from the Harris administration. Gabbard said via Racket News that she didn't think much of it until she saw an article in Uncover DC revealing that the Republican had been put on the TSA's Quiet Skies list. When I saw this, I thought, wow, okay, so everything I was experiencing was exactly what I had feared was going on, she said. It's bringing to the forefront how brazen the political retaliation and abuse of power continues to be under the Biden-Harris administration. It happened every time I boarded, says Gabbard. I've got a couple of blazers in there, and they're squeezing every inch of the entire collar, every inch of the sleeves, every inch of the edging of the blazer, she says. They're squeezing or patting down underwear, bras, workout clothes, every inch of every piece of clothing. Agents unzipped the lining inside the rollerboard of her suitcase, patting down every inch inside the liner. Gabbard was asked to take every piece of electronics out and turn each on, including her military phone and computer. That was the other strange thing. I use my military ID to get through security sometimes, says Gabbard, who among other things traveled to her reservist base in Oklahoma during this period. Once she was unable to get through security with a military ID, a Transportation Security Administration (TSA) agent saw the SSS marker. The TSA agent said, "Why are you Quad S? You're in the military," explains Gabbard. And I said, "That's exactly what I'm wondering." Gabbard goes on, "Then I said, the only thing I can think of is I work in politics," and he just said, "Oh." Is that not remarkable? Tulsi Gabbard apparently being put on a terror watch list, and why could that possibly be? What actions could she have taken that could have possibly allowed for her to be deemed as nothing more than an enemy of the regime? I wonder. I'm sure you can guess. Here we see from the Associated Press, Tulsi Gabbard, who ran for 2024 Democratic nomination, endorses Trump against former foe Harris. Yep, that'll do it. And if it sounds a bit ridiculous, oh, well, Tulsi Gabbard abandoned the Democrats and supported Donald Trump, and now she's been put on a terror threat watch list, that's ridiculous. Well, let's go ahead and jump back into that article from Town Hall for but a moment, and we'll see that it was actually confirmed by that TSA agent himself. Here we see the agent told Gabbard that sometimes supporters of a particular president who had no issues traveling before were now marked with Quad S every time they traveled. Isn't that just something? Well, of course, this shouldn't be a surprise to you, and if it is, I'd argue that I've got a bridge in Baltimore that I could sell you. And what I do find specifically most intriguing about all of this, all of these people like Elon Musk, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, rallying around Donald Trump, well, Donald Trump was nothing more than a New York Democrat, and if you were to actually apply the standard of understanding the political landscape and how it evolves throughout history, and as we've seen it shift consistently into the age of the 21st century, well, what you would realize is, realistically, Donald Trump is nothing more than a 90s Democrat. And with conservatives effectively being nothing more than speed bumps to stop progressivism, this is to the point where we've gotten, where conservatives are now supporting what was once a 90s Democrat, and effectively still is. But of course, that doesn't matter, you see, because the only things we'll do is attack him in the mainstream media. Because Donald Trump, he used to be someone who only supported Democrats. Of course, that was until he decided to run for president. Here we see from NPR, most of Donald Trump's political money went to Democrats until 5 years ago, July 28th, 2015. And why is it that Donald Trump's money may have very well shifted from going to Democrats to Republicans? Because he saw the standard bearers of the party no longer represent what it was that he believed liberalism represented, which Donald Trump, being a 90s Democrat, very much would stand for a different standard than what was being pushed under the identity politics framework of what had come out after Occupy Wall Street and the crash of what we saw being unfurled on the economy. And then, as we saw with that destruction, what happened? As Dave Smith has said so perfectly, well, rather than actually addressing the nature of the banker bailouts and all of these different things that you have issues with, how about instead of all of that, what we do is, to buy off the left, we send all of our white executives to diversity training. And in doing so, we bought off the left with nothing more than pandering and consistently demonized the right to create an even deeper cultural division, thus making sure people cannot unite. Isn't that something? And now we see people uniting around that of Donald Trump is something the establishment most certainly doesn't like. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and most importantly, my friends, as always, go tell someone you love them. Peace out.